Hello, Maestro. How you doing? Little background noise because I'm in your old haunt, Urban Golf, beavering away. Thought I'd got a moment to reflect on the video you sent me over the weekend, so we'll dive right in. Just 1 second. I think we'll do them in the order that they were sent. Lost Sevenwood. How about that? I don't know what to say. I mean, hope it wasn't too expensive a club, but maybe that's the reason the head fell off. It wasn't a very expensive club, maybe, or expensive shaft, but who knows, maybe you'll find it on another occasion. But yeah, at least it was a good shot. Its Swan Song was a good shot. Loving the logo, loving the ChatGTP logo on the ball, but I'm really intrigued to know how on earth you got that printed. Because you usually have to do quite a sizable quantity of golf balls to get your logo on them. So I'm well impressed with your resourcefulness. Let me know how it was done. Maybe you got a 3D printer or something, I'm not sure. Getting a bit close to business. Toe hits and starting the ball to the right of intended target line, that kind of vibe. And here we go. So I think we can see quite clearly just how important it is to have that target line down in front, which you shrewdly made sure was present in ensuing shots after this. But we can see if the camera's looking right down your body alignment, which it appears to be doing, then we can see, a line running parallel. If your swing ran parallel with your body alignment, you're going to smash it straight into that tree. But we know the target, I think, was somewhere over here. There's a small tree just hiding behind you, which you'd really have to pull the shot towards. I think the shot pulled towards it and even ended up further left than that. So, yeah, occupational hazard of being misaligned there, really. So I'm glad you dealt with that within this very game of golf. I'm not saying it's pointless looking at this, but looking at this in relation to the target is going to be much more difficult. So, I'm really glad that you are hit to that immediately. Just maybe a theme that I would point out is the back of your armpits, your centre of gravity, which is around about there, is out vertically above your tippy toes. If you stood a little taller, maybe got your body a little taller than that, a little bit more knee flex, then we'd find your centre of gravity would be a little bit more stable above your kneecaps, above the middle of your feet. I'll put on screen as I speak, I'll do this in the post editing, a picture of somebody similar height and build, a guy called Justin Thomas, American golfer, who sort of has a little bit taller an appearance when he sets up. The reason for that is we don't want any whiff of the centre of your swing moving away from the ground overtly and then having to move consequently towards the ground. Let's just see if you maintain your height throughout, because I think by and large you do a pretty decent job. Gaining a little bit of height there, possibly. It's minor, it's not catastrophic. Loving the way you're maintaining, could work a little bit harder on maintaining a bit of flex in the right knee. I would suggest that's possibly what's mucking things up there a little bit. But overall, you'll see the change of direction and your impact conditions. At least the club is on your right when you're striking. Your elbow and hip are in quite close proximity, and we get a good view of your left leg and your left glute. So, decent signs. Fortunately, it was a solid hit. So, yeah, we'll move on to the next one. This, I believe, was a 5-iron with a much more precise alignment of the camera, and it was a desirable shot. So I think this is worthy of maybe looking at a little bit more detail. We can see your centre of gravity still a little bit out beyond your knees. Again, a little bit weight of your body above your toes, and that has consequences in the movement of your body upwards and backwards and downwards and forwards and stuff like that, which we could do without, because that will mean sometimes the altitude of your club is in the ground or above the ground in a way that we don't ideally want. There's a line going through your upper sternum, your centre of gravity, if you like, which intersects between those two lines there. So this spot here. And let's see how uniformly your club tracks that ideal biomechanical plane. There's a little bit underneath, which we've kind of looked at before, so I'm going to go to town on that. We'd like the left arm and hands a bit more here, and the club a little bit more here, parallel with your target line, all right, parallel with your body alignment in a perfect world. Go to the end of the backswing, we get back on plane, great job, a little bit of flex in the right knee maintained, straightens out a little bit as we get to the top. So we change direction, club comes down just underneath the plane. A little bit from in to out, Yeah, and exiting above. So entering from under that line and exiting above that line. And that's one of the reasons you'll get a few pushes. If the face is pointing out in that same direction to the right, you'll get a few push shots to the right. Again, nothing catastrophic there, but just in an ideal world, we get the club a little bit more on plane and the face a little bit squarer to the target. But I think that is a trend, and I think we'll focus on trends at the moment. 8-iron, very similar circumstances, very similar setup, thankfully, due to our awareness of camera work and target line. So let's apply the same principle to this one. Let's stick a plane line in there, biomechanically sound plane line. Again, middle of the body a little bit out over the knee, so strong trend there. Stand a little taller, sir, but only so the weight moves into the middle of your feet, so you feel very grounded, so the whole of your feet press into the ground. A little bit under the plane, left arm and shaft going a little bit behind you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt because you've been on holiday, so I'll let you work on that a little bit more when you get a chance. Club rises to plane, butt of the club perfectly on plane. Tiny bit across, but no biggie. And arriving a little bit more from above this time. Oh, getting back onto plane there as we near the critical point of impact. Again, decent rotation, elbow and hip fairly close together. Chest maybe, body could be a little bit more open through this one. But you can see the ball starting perfectly on the target line there. And I think that was a decent 8-iron shot from my recollection from watching the full footage, the full length version. Now for some front on. All right, so noticeable that there's a bit of forward shaft lean, which you don't really need with the driver. You probably want the driver sitting a little bit more vertically at address and the ball probably a little bit, tiny bit further forward, but certainly not forward of your lead foot there. So a bit nitpicky. Let's watch that swing through. A couple of waggles and go. Loving the flow. All right, like the hover of the club, I do that. Very nice. All right, our only real destructive element with the metalwood swings would be if your body lurches into sort of this area, this side of this line. Yeah, nice. We're pretty disciplined. We stay behind it, get a decent launch. If it's launching right and staying there, that's because face and path are both going to the right. So we don't know on that swing whether you're a little bit underneath. I think that might have been an all right one down the middle, 230 odd yards. But yeah, I would say going pretty well. Could afford to have the ball position slightly further forward, but we don't want it back out way too far forward again. So just try and strike a nice balance there. Ball ideally would be sort of just by your left foot here, is this kind of spot. All right. And then the club would look a little bit more horizontal. Sorry about that terrible drawing of a club head there. Next up, 5-iron. Now again, we can afford to have, and I think it's important to compare this to the next swing in this. So quite well forward for a ball position with 5-iron. Don't hate that. A little bit of forward lean isn't going to kill you so much because you've got more loft on a 5-iron than you have on a driver. So that little bit of forward lean, not so destructive potentially. Possibly a little bit of weight looking like it's on your left side. It might be nice to see your sort of structure of your swing a little bit more kind of this way. Your shoulder a little bit more that way. There you go. So a little bit more 50-50. Well, it's not too bad. Takes it back from front on. Won't matter as much if it does turn out, and I haven't scrutinised this particular one heavily from front on, but it won't matter terribly if you do wander into that territory and you get a little closer to that line, as you can see. I still wouldn't say you're getting terribly ahead of it, so that's fine. That's fine. Right, no big chunky divot there, which I think is really, really significant when we look at the next piece of footage. I'm going to skip the 5 wood for just a second and skip to the 7-iron so you can see quite a strong contrast. I don't know how intentional this was. I'd love to know. You can see how much further the ball is back in your stance compared, how much more exaggerate the forward lean of the shaft. I think this must have been, it looks shorter than the 5-iron. Looks like it could be as little as a 7-iron here, or possibly even the 8. It's got a lot more loft on it. And yeah, that forward lean, the ball being almost closer to this foot than it is to that foot. Certainly I would say further back than if you put 5-iron here, you might put 7-iron about here. But that's a bit further back than is desirable. And I think what happens as a result, we get quite a profoundly steep angle, and we take quite the divot. So the steepness and the fact that the swing is coming down towards the earth a bit more severely, taking a bit of a chunk there, and the low point in your swing happening, fortunately after the shot. I believe it was a decent shot, so it's not death on a stick, but just be mindful that I don't know whether that was an intentional thing to have the ball that differently positioned. Certainly further back is fine, but I think it's gone quite a bit further back, and that lower launch, more spinning effect that you have on the ball may be the reason it came up a little bit short, I recall, of the target. Finally, this 5-wood shot, you declared it was solid, and we can see a pretty solid, correspondingly solid setup. Shaft of the 5-wood not leaning forwards as much. Obviously the benefit, I would still say maybe the ball could be a tad further forwards, a tiny tad further forwards here. And that would probably help with the club starting the ball a little bit more on line. This was a push, I believe. So again, I'm suspecting the path of the swing a little bit too much underneath at times, but it's not crazy, keeping the ball in play. All right, and decent lines to your swing there. All right, don't think we're guilty of anything atrocious like jumping into this space. Yep, managed to keep your centre pretty well there. Launched it. Left arm collapsing behind you a little bit, but it's not catastrophic. I've seen worse from you in the past. So not bad all in all. I would keep doing what you're doing by and large. Tempo and rhythm looks decent, I have to say. It's nice to see you putting these swings together in a decent pattern of rhythm, which, whether you were conscious of it or not, is really, really important. Kind of got that lovely sort of back 2-3, 1-2-3. Nice vigour, nice energy. Liking it. All right. So the only major points I was going to make, just be mindful of the path of swing back and forth, and also the divot point that you made. Because I think after this shot, after the 7-iron shot, which I suspect is a 7-iron or maybe an 8-iron. It's too long to be an 8-iron, but after this quite chunky divot that you took, I know you went back behind the ball to review where the divot was pointing, and you accused yourself of having a path that's a bit out to in. So I think the prompt to you would be to swing more in to out. So I'm going to contemplate that with a piece to camera just now, as if by magic I shall appear before your very eyes. So here we are, first point, Chris, that I want to make. We've got a sort of an illustration of the path your club might take, or certainly spend a little bit of time on. Ideally, if your club is working a long way across this line, or across this line, rather than the idea, you see my shadow there sort of illustrating the direction of travel on the club. It's inevitable that your club is travelling on a path. So the point that's being made here is that when you take divots, if your club is travelling on an arc a little bit from inside this line onto that line, strikes the ball, and then exits, and inevitably at some point or other has to travel back inside, because we are drawing a big circle here, let's say, that's going around and around, so there's a curvature to it the whole time. You can strike the ball with a club that is at the farthest point out in its arc, something like this, and the lowest point of your swing can then be achieved after you've already struck the ball. And the club begins to travel back inside, so the shape of the divot that it makes goes to the left, giving you the sometimes false accusation that you've made an out to in swing path, when the path could be potentially neutral when you strike the ball. So be careful to necessarily read a lot into your divots. A divot that goes straight towards the target, or a divot that goes slightly to the left, especially if it was a clean strike and you struck the ball first before you encountered the ground or interacted with the ground, that might not necessarily mean that at the moment that counts, the club was travelling to the left as well. It could mean that. It would depend, of course, exactly where and at what angle your club was travelling, but I would just be careful not to read too much into your divots if they're going slightly left. If they're going profoundly left, then obviously something is rotten in Denmark, as the great bard once said. But I think just I wouldn't pay excessive attention to that. The second point that we can do while we're in this situation, I want you to imagine this target is extending on towards the screen. We sometimes see the club move a little bit under you, a little bit behind you still. We want it moving more directly back, the left arm and the shaft pointing back towards the camera like this. And if we take the club quite high, we can loop it back underneath if you want, but we wouldn't want to do that excessively, because in here to out there with a club face that's pointing in the same direction will lead to push shots. Finally, when you're a little stooped, all right, and when your center of gravity, as we've illustrated just before on this video, is a little bit this way, and what will most likely happen is that your body, to regain groundedness and balance and composure, will move you this way, and you can see how that might take the toe end of the club a little bit inside the ball, and suddenly now we might clip it inadvertently off the toe, because the center of our swing, which is directly linked to the low point in your swing, if the center point moves upwards and you gain height either during the backswing or during the forward swing, then what will happen is the toe of the club will tend to back this way and will hit the ball off the toe inevitably. Alright, so I would just settle in, try and get your centre of gravity a little bit more vertically above your kneecaps and play your golf from there, my dear chap, okay? That should just about wrap it up. Get practicing and I'll catch up with you again soon, my dear chap. Nice to hear from you. Take care, Chris.